And St. John Paul was the first who began to talk about this post-Christian world, and Pope Benedict spoke about it. And then Pope Francis has spoken a great deal about it. In fact, some of the very earliest comments that he made in his pontificate was this sense that we need to begin to think differently, that the world we live in is not a Christian culture. And we kind of go along and we're surprised. Like I just had lunch last week with just a wonderful supporter of the university, and he was saying that he realized how he feels so entitled. You know, when something happens that goes against his faith or goes against the church, it's like, how could they do this? And this sense of entitlement that he's grown up with. But those days are over.
Yeah, I teach that a lot with youth ministry, and it's bracing people. I mean, the young people are more acute to this reality than adults are. It's very much a post-Christian world, and you're right. You know, when things happen, like, you know, this promotion of the Equity Act, for example, it's just a sign, you know, like, it's almost a what did we expect?
Let's take a step back and just catch people up. So the Equality Act has been something that's Congress has tried a couple of times to pass, and it's gone through Congress, but it hasn't gone through Senate. Actually, maybe it did make it through the Congress the first time because I think it was under the previous administration or the administration before Trump. But in essence, what it is trying to identify people who have same-sex attractions or transgendered, that whole population of Americans, that trying to give them equal access or seeing them as a protected class, and that's kind of some language that the Act uses. But the problem with it is it really isn't about equality. It's really about putting one group above another. And honestly, it's going to be Christians. It's going to be people of faith that are really going to be in a bind with this act.
Is there anything good about the act?
Well, sure. Well, first off, in Dr. Ryan Anderson, do you know?
Yep.
So I don't know if you followed. He wrote a book, just a really good book called When Harry Became Sally.
Yeah.
And Amazon has taken that off. They don't allow that to be on Amazon anymore, so they won't let that book. And that's just that's another element of what's going on in our world, right? You can buy Mein Kampf on Amazon, but you cannot buy his book because it's really critical of the whole transgender activist movement.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he says, and it's really important, and the bishops are saying this, I've got the letter in front of me from the bishops, is that the population, and focusing a little bit more on the transgender population, is a group of people that are struggling, you know, and they're suffering, and we need to be attentive to that, and we can't lose sight of that reality, right? The reality is that this is a human person in front of us who is loved by God, who Jesus gave his life for, right?
Right.
So we can't forget that population of people.
Transgender people have the highest rate of suicide.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a really significant issue.
It is, and there's so much that goes into this.
Right.
But what this act does is it wants to try to make sure that population is not discriminated against, which is a good thing, discrimination like that, just because of that. But what it goes on to do is it discriminates against us. It discriminates against Catholics, and it discriminates against Christians, and it discriminates against men and women. It's when you take a look at it and break it down, it discriminates against everyone and just kind of raises this group above everybody else. And so here are a couple of things that the bishops pointed out that it does.
Yeah.
It punishes faith-based charities and shelters, foster care agencies, so that we don't have the ability to dictate how we go forward in that. Organizations that have to support transgender transitioning or gender transitioning, an individual cannot even speak out against it. A licensed counselor can't speak out against it. And this is even with children. This is one of the things that's most frightening about it. The other thing is there's a whole section in this act about calling pregnancy equality. But in essence, what it's saying is that an individual can have an abortion up until the day before the baby is due, and doctors are forced to have to do that. Girls and women being able to go and boys going to opposite locker rooms, expand government's definition of public places. This could be interesting, forcing universities to have open dorms. You just get to go to whatever dorm you identify as. So it just goes on. The other part that was just so troubling is in 1993, there was the Freedom of Restoration Act, really identifying religious freedom that we have. This provides individuals and groups no freedom in that, so that you can't claim religious freedom. You have to be able to, this new act forces religious people to abide by the new act. So it is
Scary.
It's scary. It's another train wreck. And yeah, I think obviously, as you stated, and it's important, is reach out to your senator. So far it's gone, I think there was only 4 Republicans in the House that voted it. So it's just gone party line down the road. And yeah. So I remember when I was a student here, I took a class and it says all social engineering is preceded by verbal engineering. If we can begin to use language, well, the Equality Act.
Right.
Great name, rather than the Anti-Religious Act. It's a great name.
So where do we find hope in this?
Well, it was going to take us back exactly where I always go to, Bob, and that is that it's where we don't find hope. We don't find hope in our Congress and our Senate and in our president. So we find hope in the Lord and in the Lord, but also specifically in this in the teachings of the church as well. That those are reflected in the dignity of the human person and the value that the individual has. So that's where we find our hope in. And this is going to be something I think we'll just talk about coming down the road over the next many weeks and months, I suppose. We need to begin to live differently. That we are accustomed to living into a Christian culture, and things are just changing so quickly. The Catholic Christian has got to learn to live differently. And that doesn't mean we hide, or it doesn't mean we run away. It doesn't mean that we isolate. But that we've got to do it differently.